Have you ever stopped to think about what it actually takes to build freedom completely from the ground up? There's a historical truth we need to start with today. The Underground Railroad ran on trust, training, and territory. And in this explainer, we're going to discover how that incredible legacy, that literal architecture of freedom, is being entirely reborn for the 21st century. Because, this isn't just a history lesson. It is an active, ongoing blueprint. We're going to explore how those exact same principles of trust, local training, and reclaiming territory are being applied to something completely different today. It's a genuinely fascinating journey, and I honestly cannot wait to unpack the whole thing with you. So to really get where this new movement is heading, we've got to look at its roots. And that brings us straight to the Quindaro Underground Railroad Museum in Kansas City. It's so wild when you realize that the original network, they didn't ask for permission, they didn't petition existing systems to treat them a little better, or just sit around waiting for laws to magically change in their favor. Nope. Instead, they quietly and efficiently built their very own parallel infrastructure to move people to freedom. That deep-seated independence is absolutely crucial to grasp because that exact same blueprint is being used right now, just for a totally different kind of freedom. Enter a concept known as the underground connection. And I'll be honest, when I first started looking into this, it completely flipped how I think about the internet. We're talking about a community-owned digital network. It's a system built directly on that historical foundation in Kansas City we just talked about, but the goal today is achieving modern data sovereignty. It's built entirely by the people, for the people. And it begs a really massive question. What actually happens when everyday communities, rather than these giant tech corporations, are the ones who actually own the digital future? Let me ask you this. Where does your personal data actually go? Under the old system, we're basically just surrendering our digital lives to massive platforms. Facebook, YouTube, X. They harvest our data to sell us highly targeted ads for, like, that air fryer we literally just mentioned out loud in the kitchen, right? And they return basically zero value to us, the actual creators of that data. But the new system, the Underground Connection, takes a completely different route. It's all about empowering communities to build a parallel infrastructure, to literally own their own digital lives, completely bypassing the need to beg existing tech giants for a seat at the table. There is a brilliant philosophy driving this whole movement forward, and it's this. We don't compete with the system, we reposition it. Just think about that for a second. You don't waste your time and energy fighting massive tech monopolies. It's kind of like a David and Goliath story, but actually, scratch that. Instead of throwing a stone, David just walks away and builds his own, much better city. You simply build a sovereign alternative that makes the old system totally irrelevant to your community's digital wealth. It's a profound shift in mindset. You go from constantly resisting to actively creating. And this repositioning, it doesn't start in some billionaire's shiny Silicon Valley high-rise. It starts incredibly humbly. Just imagine stepping into the Vernon Community Center in Kansas City and seeing everyday modern routers providing internet extensions right there in the neighborhood. And the best part is, these are being installed by young men from the local community who are actively learning to do the technical work themselves. This is the absolute origin point of a revolutionary infrastructure being built right now with off-the-shelf hardware and local hands, which introduces a really clever concept, the pseudo-data center. Now, usually when we hear the phrase data center, what do we picture? A massive, windowless, energy-hungry warehouse out in the desert somewhere, just humming with thousands of corporate servers, right? But these pseudo-data centers are entirely different. They are strategically placed mini data centers located directly inside everyday neighborhoods. And because they're operated by the very people living there, the data actually stays home. It's secure, it's highly local, and it fundamentally changes the physical geography of the internet. So how do you actually scale something like this across a whole city? Well, technology director William Wells calls it a rinse and repeat methodology. And it has this incredibly driving rhythm to it. First, you equip the local youth with the technical skills they need, train locally. Then they install the hardware. Next, you connect those hubs via a secure mesh network, which, by the way, is basically a private interlocking web of connections that totally bypasses traditional internet providers. And once that's established, you just expand, block by block. It's simple, it's replicable, and it's highly effective. And to really grasp the power of that local training, consider a 1932 Kansas City high school diploma belonging to a woman named Opal N. Walker. Training the youth to install these data centers isn't some brand new, disruptive tech bro concept. It's actually a direct continuation of a deeply rooted generational legacy of community education and self-reliance. Sure, the tools have evolved from paper and pencils to routers and fiber optics, but the spirit of community empowerment, of lifting up the next generation, that is exactly the same today as it was nearly a century ago. All of this work is guided by a few core pillars that form a really cohesive ideology. The primary goal is to physically be the platform, not just a program existing on somebody else's terms. It's built on training locally and securing data through that private members-only mesh network we mentioned. But honestly, my absolute favorite part of this whole philosophy is the idea that people are the fuel. The core belief here is that the everyday people creating the data should absolutely be the ones harvesting its value and keeping that wealth local. This strategic framework is incredibly sharp. It honestly reminds me of that classic Sun Tzu strategy. We win before the fight begins by building infrastructure others must connect to. Think about how often traditional community groups just exhaust themselves, writing endless grants, competing for tiny pools of funding, or begging for resources. This project completely bypasses that old battlefield. By owning the infrastructure itself, they get to dictate the terms of connection. They are not asking for a piece of the pie. They are literally building the bakery. And what surprised me the most as I dug into all of this is how far it's actively spreading. Timed for the June 2026 Juneteenth Jubilee, this extends way beyond its origins in Kansas City. You've got an anchor node established in Milwaukee, nodes taking root on the West Coast in Seattle and LA. It's extending up north into Canada, out into the ocean to Bermuda, and all the way across the Atlantic over to Ghana. We are looking at a sovereign digital ecosystem currently spanning 4 countries and 3 entirely different continents. No way, right? It's huge. I really wanted to highlight the Bermuda node specifically because its strategic positioning is just fascinating. Spearheaded by partner Corn Smith, Bermuda acts as an Atlantic bridge. It literally sits right at the historical intersection of African, British, and indigenous histories. So rather than just being a random geographical spot on a map, it acts as a very intentional bridge connecting the deep, complex historical roots of the diaspora straight into this new, empowering digital future. It is a perfect marriage of history and modern technology. Now, an ecosystem this massive obviously requires some serious collaboration, and it's driven by a philosophy to orchestrate things rather than own them outright. You have groups like Andrew Networks providing the heavy technical backbone, while Esteem Village focuses entirely on community empowerment and wealth. Combine that with the Digital Connect handling the actual connectivity solutions, and Delphine mapping out the strategic framework, and you get a very powerful, unified coalition. They're building a permanent, self-sustaining infrastructure together, not just running some temporary charity project. But amidst all this talk of platform layers, VPN meshes, and global network nodes, we really can't lose sight of the reality on the ground. The true heart of the underground connection is the physical, living community itself. The local parks, the neighborhood pavilions, the places where people actually gather face-to-face. The technology, as incredibly advanced as it is really just invisible piping running in the background. It's the people gathered in these beautiful, vibrant local spaces that actually matter and give the network its pulse. Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today. If your personal data is the fuel of the modern digital age, isn't it time your community actually owned the engine? The Underground Connection proves that a parallel community-owned internet isn't just some abstract pie-in-the-sky theory. It is actively being built block by block right now. It definitely challenges me to rethink my own digital footprint, who I give my data to, and what the future of the web could actually look like. Thanks for exploring this incredible blueprint with me.